And so I'm just going to talk about really 7 reasons why this partnership with E&Y is so critical to us. 7 reasons why you all who are present from industry and from the government, why your help in this initiative is absolutely important for us. And so let me start out by talking about what are some of the things that are nearest to my heart. And so if we look at why research insights matter, it is really looking at ways in which we can make informed decisions rather than best practices, if you will. So I think our job at the university is to balance rigor and relevance. And I like to say that our course of action is really related to next practices, what we ought to be doing, based on the issues that we see as critical and which are informed, by ideas, from you. So I spent a lot of time in the United States. I was in Singapore for 7 years and 6 weeks in Hyderabad. And so one of the things that really struck me is when I talked to the business community in Asia and India, how the responses I got were totally different. So if I'm in the US and I talk to C-level people, and you ask them for what are the priorities, human capital will show up number 5, 6, or 7 in their priorities. Everywhere I go in the emerging markets, it shows up as number 1. And then you kind of dig into it and say, what is happening? And one is that the rate of growth is high, the scaling up factor is high, and if you happen to be a leading company, then the startups who are below you are using you as the training platform and they simply steal from you. And so leading companies have turnovers of 10-12%. And I had one company tell me, and I had gone to them soliciting research funds, and said, no problem, anything you want we'll give you, but you have to solve one problem. So I said, what's that? If you can help us figure out how to reduce our turnover from 12% to 10%, you can have everything that you want. All right? I mean, for this company, it was 400,000 people. 2%, you can figure out is a decent amount of reduction, but that's the replacement they have. But this company was also hiring at the rate of 10% or so. So the amount of effort that has to go into training and into skill building, etc., is absolutely critical. And you would not find this kind of an emphasis, this kind of request, coming from a Western C-level person. Second area is really that strikes me is diversity and fragmentation. If you look at the Indian market, just within India, we have Gujarat, we have Andhra, we also have UP, which is where I'm from, and so there's a lot of difference within India on languages. If the GST doesn't come through, which seems to be the case, the tariff systems are different. There's culturally we're different. So a lot of differences within India itself. Now just imagine if we are comparing Seoul, Korea with Manila in Philippines, with Dhaka in Bangladesh, and with Hyderabad in India. Look at the diversity that is there. And this diversity is there in monetary systems, it is there in the culture, it's just regulations and so on and so forth. So the second topic that really has struck me and this is the market telling me, is how do we manage across borders? The corresponding to that is also why in emerging markets we have seen a different path towards innovation. Instead of product innovation, we see a lot of process innovation. So, I mean, the notion is that, look, if we still haven't fully penetrated generation X plus, X of technology, why worry about X plus 2? Let's look at how we can get efficiency and economies of scale, etc., in generation X. And when that platform is built up, we can go up the value stream. And if we go back 50 years, and look at what happened in Japan, later what happened in Taiwan, and what happened in Korea, what we will see is that companies in this part of the world started out at the bottom. We started out by looking at options that were relatively cheap, that were simplified, and the value that was being created was in a business model where you had very thin margins, but you had a huge volume. But with the volume came expertise, and over a period of time, many of these companies, you look at Samsung, it was a contract manufacturer. That's all they did. They were working on pennies. Then they added technology, and now Samsung is in the top 5 brands in the world. So we can actually learn by what other emerging market companies have gone through. And the idea really is how to go up the value curve. So for my marketing friends, as they may be in this audience, India needs to move from B2B marketing, where we are actually simply selling to other businesses who put their brand name on it and sell it in the marketplace. We need to move up the branding ladder from B2B to B2B2C. So we need to get in the consumer's mind to extract the value. The sixth item I'd like to mention is that about 6 months ago, I started working with a colleague of mine. His name is Tom Robertson, former dean at Wharton. And we decided that while the rest of the world was talking about how emerging market companies should expand globally, we will play the contrary, and we'll look at how developed market MNCs should defend themselves. And we found that there were only 2 sectors that they were able to defend themselves. One was aerospace, which is Boeing and Airbus, and huge entry costs. And the second area was really related to consumer electronics and software, the Google and the Facebook, the media, the new media, if you want to call it. And so these were the only 2 areas where the West was hanging on. And in literally every other area, they were having a great deal of difficulty defending themselves. So the question is why? And we've talked to some C-level people in Asia particularly, and one of the hypotheses is the tyranny of headquarters. There's people sitting in California or sitting in Chicago making decisions related to this part of the world, and they don't have full information. That's one of the hypotheses. Another hypothesis is the capital, the financial capital in this part of the world is more patient, meaning it's a question of the glass half full versus glass half empty. Now these are conjectures, if you will, these are hypotheses. And what we need to do is we need to do the research to find out to what extent these things are actually true. And these are, I hope, some of the topics we'll explore. And then one of the things that we always run into, particularly in India, is the paucity of working capital, particularly for SMEs. And so, how can that be mitigated? How can we start using things like information to help, with the working capital efficiency? But these are some topics that have come to simply because I've been talking to people in industry, and these are the kinds of things our faculty, with the help of E&Y and the partner schools that were mentioned, that we could take a serious crack. But more importantly, we are looking from the business community, we're looking for guidance to help us identify the problems that are worth working on. And then it's our job to, go out and explore them and to share the ideas and then come up with future forums where we can have more of an interchange and see how we can move forward. So with that, let me thank once again E&Y. I was going to mention names, but in the last 15-20 minutes, we've had a literal invasion from E&Y. Just kidding. So there are too many names for me to mention, but thanks again. And Jay, thank you for coming all the way from London. And I want you to know there's a direct flight. You probably were on it, right? Okay. so anyway, and also I'd like to thank all the attendees from the government and from industry. I'd also like to thank the media for joining us today.